We're gonna ratchet. What up, viewers? What up? What up? Calc Soups here, and welcome to The Friend Zone, a monthly video game show where I discuss the latest games with my friends. Today, we'll be discussing the latest installment of the Ratchet and Clank franchise, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. We'll start off with our typical talking points about our personal history with Ratchet and Clank. Then we'll go into somewhat about the marketing and the campaign for the game, what we were expecting and how we would describe it. We'll talk about gameplay, specifically around like our favorite guns, because that's a lot of what makes Ratchet and Clank Ratchet and Clank. We'll talk about the narrative, the characters, what the future of the series looks like, any replay value that might have, and then our final thoughts. So without further ado, let's jump in and introduce Tyler. What up, Tyler?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, great to have you. Really excited to talk about Ratchet and Clank. I've definitely been on board for quite some time. Speaking of personal histories, I didn't I didn't have a PlayStation for the longest time, so I played the most recent one before this, which was the 20. Was there a subtitle to the 2016 one?
I
Uh,
was just thinking that I don't think so, but maybe
so
I'm wrong.
yeah, or like Ratchet and Clank the movie, the game, or something like
Yeah.
that, because I think it had the movie tie-in. But I mostly picked that one up, A, because this was the first time I had a PlayStation and could play it, and B, because I knew it was Insomniac and I knew they were working on Spider-Man. So see what they do with this, typical franchise, and how do they take it to um, see what the studio's like and how they're going to bring Spider-Man, how well they can do with that before they bring up Spider-Man. So that's my rather short history with Ratchet and Clank. I know that this goes way back on PlayStation, and I don't even know what number installment this is, but I do know that there is quite a long history with games. What's your personal history with Ratchet and Clank?
Yeah, I feel like this is a little bit of an embarrassing admission, but this was my first one. I downloaded the 2016 game. I think it was on maybe PSN, a few years ago. It was free or
Okay,
something. And I
okay.
remember downloading it and thinking, I'm gonna play this at some point, and then I just never did, which I feel like is a little bit of
Oh,
a kind of an embarrassment. But yeah, this is my first one.
yeah. Okay, okay. Well, not yeah. So for the viewers, there won't be too much history for those longtime Ratchet and Clank fans. I know that there's some rivalry with potentially like Jack and Daxter, um, but yeah, for the most part, I don't typically like. I don't know, kind of like the 3D platformer kind of genre. That just wasn't my thing growing up. So, and like I said, with this being PlayStation exclusive, I never really picked up the series until.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of came in as an Insomniac fan.
Okay.
I think I've played and loved pretty much every game that they've put out. I was a
Sure.
big fan of Sunset Overdrive, obviously Spider-Man, but like I kind of knew that I needed to. This was sort of a blind spot, and I needed to check it out. Um, I will say I know we'll get into it, but I did really really enjoy it. I certainly have some thoughts as far as things that I wish I would have seen,
Okay.
but but yeah, I don't want to I don't want to jump too far ahead.
Yeah.
But
No.
yeah, big Insomniac fan, so that's kind of where that was my inroad.
Do you think so? Speaking of like the marketing or the lead up, like I think we knew about this. God, what was it? Summer like the PlayStation Big Summer Blowout last year. Like that was the first time I think we had seen Ratchet and Clank. Maybe earlier that year, but like relatively short campaign. And at that time, it was hyped as like a PS5 launch title. And I think they were just never willing to admit that this was going to be that it was going to be like delayed due to COVID, which was kind of reasonable at the time. Like people were like games were getting delayed left and right. So, but they never officially said like the game's being delayed. They just gave that weird thing in like September where they're like, oh, it's a launch
Mhm.
window timing or something like that. I don't know what that means. Just say it's been delayed. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I think obviously, like, we can't fault anybody for quarantine
sure,
and all that
absolutely.
stuff. This would have been an amazing launch title. I think just playing it
Hmm.
recently kind of hit me like it's a beautiful game. And I totally understand why they were sort of leaning into it as like kind of the launch
Yeah.
title to show off the PS5 because it was really beautiful to play through.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the criticisms of kind of the PS5 launch was just the lack of exclusives. Like Demon Souls, I don't think like for anybody who played it back in the day, like the upres wasn't really what was going to drive people there. Spider-Man was like Spider-Man 1.5, so like that wasn't really a launch title. So like this was one of the big pulls.
Mhm.
Like by PlayStation 5, you can play Ratchet and Clank. Kind of launch window started. I don't think that's affect. I mean, the PlayStation still sold out everywhere. I don't think it's really affecting sales, but it was like, hey, I bet a bunch of people were looking forward to this one of the games they pick up, and I think a lot of people did pick it up because there's not a lot of like exclusives, even still. Again, no fault, a lot of that has to do with COVID. And yeah, I think pretty for exclusives, but I think this was a good one.
Yeah, I don't know if demo kiosks are still a thing or at least as much, but I definitely know that even with my short time with Ratchet and Clank, it was. I mean, a friend would come over and I would just show him a few minutes of it. Just as like, hey, look, here's like a new game that looks beautiful. This was
Mm-hmm.
certainly kind of a demo game that was accessible. I think the problem
Yeah.
with Demon Souls, at least that I ran into, because I was hunting for kind of those launch window, like beautiful game to show off.
Mm-hmm.
Demon Souls is tough, obviously, and
Yeah.
everybody knows that, but it's not an easy game to just sort of jump in and show somebody and have them play around. And Ratchet and Clank was perfect for that. I mean, you could drop them in, here's 20 weapons.
Yeah.
It's relatively easy, go crazy. Yeah, it was perfect for that kind of demo showcase game.
I don't have a talking point for this, but like, what did you think of it on? I mean, maybe we'll get into it in gameplay and stuff like that. But just the PlayStation, like showing off the PlayStation 5 ness of the game. I guess, like you're saying, like this game is really, you know, really pushing what a PlayStation 5 can be and can do.
I think that it was really impressive I mean I had moments like this I think throughout the game where I was just blown away that I was playing a game and I wasn't watching some, you know, DreamWorks, Pixar, some new movie.
Yeah,
It's just amazing to think about. I know this sounds maybe trite, but like how far we've come, I guess.
sure.
Um, it just like watching the cutscenes, it just blew me away. And I mean, every time you went from gameplay to a cutscene, the close-ups of the faces. I think I played it on. This might be a question for you. I think I played it on the performance mode that has the ray tracing. I think there was
Ooh,
like 60 frames per second plus ray tracing. I didn't play 30 frames 4K. I thought the 60 frames, whatever it was, Performance RX or something, Performance Plus,
uh huh.
whatever it was, looked absolutely beautiful. So I kind of played it that way the whole time, but it felt so clean and pretty, and it just yeah. Again, I can't speak to enough to how amazing the game looks to
Oh
play.
yeah. I thought it was beautiful, and like even when we get to talking about some of the guns of like just how much stuff is happening on screen at once with like minions running around and game just looked clean and beautiful and the colors really worked and and the seamless transition between. I think that was really the selling point was like seamless transition between worlds and like, the whole idea of like the dimensionator and like switching between dimensions was and you can customize your character and thankfully like your whatever your character is wielding or holding or looking like or wearing like transitions into the cutscene and like seamless transition between cutscene and gameplay.
I'm still
Yeah,
a sucker for that. That
yeah,
sort of I know that most cutscenes now are kind of in game, and I get it, but I'm still a sucker for changing your outfit and then seeing it in a cutscene. Like for some
yes,
reason, that's just one thing that always I just love. I don't know. I know it's I don't want to put a negative for another game, but I think the customization was kind of what I wanted from like Jedi Fallen Order, for example,
oh
where
sure.
you've got like kind of a rich world,
Hmm.
and I spent a lot of time just like every 30 minutes I feel like I would switch around my outfit a little bit. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, and especially like you said when it comes up when you're like in a cutscene and you look
Hmm.
different. I don't know why. I just love it.
Yeah, no, I think that should be. I think that should be standard in games going forward. Like any big AAA game that wants to sell big AAA experience and customization and all that kind of. My character just goes to the default armor. That scene.
Yeah.
Nope, I can take completely out of it. Like, I'll probably can play it, but yeah, it just big fault, and the fact that this game didn't is big. Some of the power, and again, the seamless transition, gameplay, and cutscenes really shows the power of the PlayStation 5.
Yeah, like you said too, like the amount of effects sometimes that were going on, especially in obviously big battles, but also
Mm-hmm.
kind of on those when you're on literally on rails, those sections where you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
sliding around. Um, I mean, some of those honestly, I wish it was easier in some of these games to just sort of almost like a chapter select where when I show off something, I want to
Oh
show
yeah.
off on rails with a giant robot,
Yes.
around me. I want to show off that moment to anyone and everyone that I can. Um, and it just, yeah, this is one of the parts of this game that I feel like was 10 out of 10 was just visuals
Yeah. Yeah.
was
Definitely
awesome.
cranking those up. So with this being your first one, like, is there? And for those who haven't played it, like, what were you expecting going in, and kind of like how would you describe it? 'Cause I know that, like I said, I usually don't like or tend towards like 3D platformers, and there's definitely that aspect of this. But I think that's what enamored me in the 2016 version, which is it's a 3D platformer, but with like big crazy guns. And like I really think I picked up 2016 because it had the pixelator, and I like saw a trailer for it, and I just loved like turning creatures into like 8-bit pixels. Like that was the end all be all, like my favorite gun in the last game. Um, but yeah, like, did you go in knowing that it was like a 3D platformer plus big crazy guns, or how would you describe it?
Well, first of all, just real quick before I forget, I love the pixelizer as well, and
Uh huh.
I intentionally tried to use it on every boss just because I wanted to see how big I could, pixelate something. And turns out, I
Yeah.
think almost every boss you could pixelate.
Oh, that's
Um,
great.
but yeah, so I will say I love kind of 3D platformer collectathon games.
Okay.
I one of my favorite genres, I think, as a kid amongst probably RPGs and first person shooters was sort of like the Banjo Kazooie, Super Mario
Okay.
64, Donkey
Yep.
Kong 64. Those kind of here's a big map and there's a bunch of stuff on it, so go
Yeah.
do stuff.
Yep.
Um, I don't play those probably as much anymore, but I kind of wanted to get back into it with this game because it
Hmm.
looked kind of like the sweet spot of kind of a light game. Wouldn't take too long,
Yeah.
but you could collect everything. You could unlock costumes, unlock weapons, power up
Hmm.
stuff. Like that kind of is a genre that I maybe don't play as much anymore, but can
Maybe
pretty
because I
easily
think
fall back into.
some of it might be the industry doesn't think that there's much money in it, but like with things like Crash, yeah, the Crash remaster, Spyro
Mhm.
remaster, like I think we are learning that some people are nostalgic for that kind of stuff, and enough of a market there to, to sell to. And I hope that the Ratchet and Clank series continues on after this one.
For sure, and all the color, all of the personality. I think
Yeah.
that it just sort of it sticks out a little bit in a kind of today's modern, and I'm terribly just grouping everything together. But like, I think most
Hmm.
of the time what you see in these AAA games is maybe a little bit more stark
Yep.
grayness or
Oh
a little
yeah,
bit
I think
more quote unquote gritty.
the beige and gray grim dark of like the modern gritty shooter. Like, I mean, even looking at like the backdrop for it, like the bright purples and the oranges, like, yeah, I really like the vibrancy of it, um of this kind of game. I think, and you 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 might misinterpret like the fact that it's colored and it's cartoony for like maybe the game, maybe it isn't showing off the full fledged photorealistic PlayStation 5 super resolution stuff, but like I definitely think that that it's working to like to animate these characters in all sorts of ways to show off the power. So even though it's not the gritty, photorealistic, grimdark, I still think beautiful when it's working properly, um, or when everything's working together.
Yeah, I mean, even that, the very first kind of section, that parade section, there's
Oh
just so
yeah.
much stuff going on that I feel like I spent a lot of time just looking at the backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
It just, and I think in to your point, the color, um, it sort of emphasizes the complexity, and it just makes everything interesting to look at, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I really like. So we're in the parade section, like we're talking through some of the gameplay. I think we'll definitely talk about some of our favorite guns, but um, I think it added it. This game added a few new features, um, with like the jumping from. I think like the jumping from there. I really liked the switching universes, although I did get a little confused when you smacking the crystals to like switch back and forth. And I'm like, where is the golden bolt or whatever? Like, I got a little lost in there, but I think it wasn't a setback. But, yeah, what did you think of the gameplay?
That's actually a super interesting point because I did find myself looking at the map, I feel like more than maybe I wanted to.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's interesting. Gameplay wise, I guess this is where I might start to sound a little bit negative.
Sure.
I think it's a lot of fun. I think the gameplay is great. I do feel like there's a little bit of a sameness that I kind of started to feel
Mm-hmm.
towards the end. Um,
Yeah.
and we can get into it separately, but
No,
I
that's
do want to
perfect.
call out real quick. Like, I think to me, where it really kind of could shine was actually in the arena,
Ooh. Okay.
where it might restrict you to, one gun, or it might throw things at you. I feel like I had to sort of purposefully, I wanted to level up each gun, I wanted to use
Mm-hmm.
each gun, but that was kind of my a self uh, constructed kind of task.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if I had just fallen into a groove where I was using kind of one or two guns,
Yeah.
that sameness would have been a little bit more apparent, because it did feel like, we fought the same kind of big robot boss. It felt like over and over again a little bit.
Yeah.
I just felt like sometimes the gameplay was a little bit samey. Um,
Oh, sure. No, I definitely agree. I definitely agree with that. Like, there's the enemy variety. I don't think is necessarily up to par. I mean, it's yeah, depending on. I don't know that I was expecting too much out of it, but I think you're right. Like, a third through the game we fight one big mega robot. At 2/3 through the game we fight two big mega robots.
mhm.
At the end of the game you fight a big mega robot. Okay, that was um yeah. I think the enemy variety is definitely something. There was a little bit of like a tactical experience of like, hey, right now I'm getting sent a wave of minions, so now I'm going to use the electrifying gun or something that something that's got like an AOE or blast in front of me, as opposed to when I'm fighting a boss, I'll be using my heavy hitters like the rocket launcher or stuff like that. So, and I also, I don't know if that's just the nature of the way we both play, but I also, you know, whenever I got a gun to max level, I would I would I would switch it up. So that gave me a little bit of variety. Although, again, I think there was a little bit of kind of grind between something grinding between like I want to switch weapons, but like this part's getting pretty hard, and I need to use some powerful gun to through it, or I'm trying to level up the sniper rifle, but I'm using it to shoot you know one hit minions, and like that doesn't really jive, so I to something else.
Yeah, actually, I found that a lot of times I think towards the end, when everything was leveled up, I
Hmm.
kind of fell into these grooves of, every fight, especially every big one, I would maybe start off with like summoning a couple of what was this, mushroom
Oh yeah.
summons or whatever. Summon a few of those,
Yep.
maybe break out the essentially the shotgun,
Yep.
electric. Like I kind of fell into this routine of the same kind of, and I mean, again, it's some of this is my own kind of play style, so I'm not
Sure.
going to hold that really against the game at all. But um, it did sort of feel like I really enjoyed the arena where it would force me to like only use one thing or switch it up as sort of like a restriction. And
Yeah.
I think I wanted more arena, I guess is what I guess
Okay.
is what I'm getting at.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because I probably got my most of my frustration was in the arena just because like sometimes you'd have the boss like slamming the ground and I couldn't quite figure out attack pattern, and then I'm stuck with, or I could be stuck with one gun. The one thing that did frustrate me to all ends was there's when you like grab or like when you like chain hook through a rift, you're still targetable during that time, and there's like nothing you can do to like avoid shots. So like I would chain hook, and like during the whole 2 maybe 3 second animation, I'm still able to be hit. And so like there'd be times where I'm like in the middle of fire trying to chain hook across the arena and or anywhere in the world, and I would like get hit and die mid animation. And I was like, there should really be some iframes in where I
Yeah.
can't be targeted or something. It you know again it where I'm talking like maybe 2 seconds for the entire animation, but if the freaking rocket launcher guys are just shooting the ground below you, like you're gonna explode and like, take a bunch of
Yeah, there were a few rounds I remember where they restrict you to one gun, and if the gun is, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know if this is accurate, but this is what it felt like, is that I think that if you left, powered up the gun and came back, it was easier. I don't know if that's
damage.
actually how it worked
I
or if I was just better.
I
Um,
think no, I think it used like I hadn't even bought one of the guns when I went into the arena for it. Like the I don't know if it was the rocket launcher or something like that. I didn't even have it yet, but I was still earning like experience with the gun even though I didn't own it. So I think external experience before going into the arena or you gained XP during playing the arena. So even if you fail, you've still gotten that XP. Like I think the guns level does affect your arena. So like when I did the shotgun one, like that thing was already full, and so like running through the shotgun arena, super trivial. Oh, this thing's mega powered.
I think that's actually, I think it was the rocket launcher for me as well, where I feel like I played it the first couple of times, it was
Mm-hmm.
pretty weak, and I wasn't able to beat anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think I came back, and it was like I just destroyed. Um, but I think ultimately more. I think I just wanted more things like that, where it kind of forced me to do things a different way or
I could
approach things a different way.
I could see that. I also think that the dragon creature was a little bit underutilized. Like you get it on like the second planet, and then there's like somewhat when you're 90% of the game, there's a
Mm,
dragon. But
mhm.
I thought the dragon was really fun. I did think it was frustrating that like I couldn't figure out how to make my flying inverted. So like I just got super frustrated because I was like, I don't like I fly inverted. Like let me change it, and like I could change my shooting inversion, but I couldn't like the flighting inversion was a different thing, and like I was super confused. And I thought again, speaking of the PlayStation, I thought I was supposed to be able to set that in like the universal settings, but if that's a thing, I still don't know how to use that.
Actually, yeah, I struggled a little bit with the flying as well, and I think that there was something where I didn't even understand that you could necessarily shoot at first.
Oh
I
yeah,
kind of made some mistakes initially with that, and was like, what am I supposed to do here?
yeah.
What did you think of the kind of the riding the scarabs or riding the bugs?
I like the bugs. I actually like. I didn't read. I didn't. I found it kind of low skill enough that I could just hold on like super thrust the whole time. Like they gave you plenty of time to
Mhm.
like move around. I actually would have liked to see like a time trial kind of situation.
Yeah.
I guess maybe there was, but like I was expecting like some pretty hard time trials because I think in 2016 there's like a whole racing mini game and you had to like be the fastest racer or something like that. And I was like kind of expecting that. I didn't get too much of that. I think slug races would have been a fun game mode.
Yeah, I guess I one of the questions I wanted to bring up, which this that transitions into perfectly, is just like I kind of feel like there were some things like that that I would have liked to see. I feel like the end game, I know that obviously with collecting is its own kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
you've beaten the game now, keep collecting. But I feel like there should have been maybe a few more end game things, like maybe yeah, like races or
Hmm.
additional arena stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe like a secret world, something where because I kind of felt like when I was sort of done with this, and again, I played it, I fully completed it, I platinumed it. It
Hmm.
was I really enjoyed it. But once it was kind of over, it was like, well, I guess I'll just uninstall this and move along.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's DLC coming. I don't know what, but it did feel like there could have been a little bit more like something like that, mini games or and whatnot.
Sure. Oh, and going back to your map, I'm a little bit torn about like having to check the map because any game where I don't have a map and I don't know where things are to like complete everything, I get super frustrated. So I've like slowly started to appreciate like just give me a map, tell me where I need to go, and I'll figure it out. But I think you're right. I think it does kind of break up flow sometimes. Although I would usually organically play through the entire planet, and then if I missed anything, I would just check the map and find those before I like jettison out the. Um, so
Yeah,
it really didn't
that's
break up
fair.
flow too much for me uh, when I was doing it. Like the first time I'm running around the nefarious world or whatever, I don't think the map feature had been working yet. So I'm like, how do I get to this thing? And I don't even have the ability to get to that yet. So it was like, oh, you got to come back. I actually Googled one thing and it was like, oh, you come back later in the game. And I was like, oh, well, then don't tell me it's on the map or something. Like, yeah, I got,
Yeah.
I got a little frustrated.
Yeah, I think the map I definitely appreciate that. I think that's a great point. And I mean, it's sort of like the Doom or I've been playing through Resident Evils now after we
Uh
played
huh.
Village.
Yeah.
But like when they kind of straight up show you like you've gotten everything in this section, like
Yes.
I really appreciate that now. I think
Hmm.
for me it was more in response to maybe what you were talking about earlier, where you're kind of hitting the crystals, you're going back and forth. It's kind of like you hit a crystal and then now it's like, okay, now what's accessible from this new
Yeah.
area? Like
Half
I
of the
think it was
map.
some of that.
Yeah.
Um, there was a little bit, I don't want to say confusing, but just sort of like I was hitting crystals and then being like, okay, now what's open? Like, what can I get to maybe now? And then sometimes
Yeah.
you kind of walk over there and it would be like the map shows you that it's available or it seemingly is, but then it's not.
Yeah.
This sounds more negative. It really wasn't that big of a deal,
Yeah.
but
No.
it's something that I did notice.
Or I would like not realize that there was like a teleportation thing that would just take me back to my ship, and I'm like, I have to run back through this entire level to
Oh,
get,
I
to get back to
yeah.
my ship, and I'm like, no. And then they give you the rocket boots, and I was like, okay, this is fun. I can pretend I'm jet set radioing across the plane, get back to the ship or whatever.
I think the level that was it was like snow, it was like snowy,
Oh
and it
yes,
was like an underground kind of like lab. There
lab.
was
Yeah.
I did step on a teleporter that took me back to my ship. And then that one is an annoying one where there seems to be you can only really go through it one direction.
Oh yeah.
If you kind of miss something a little ways in, this is like completionist stuff that's
Yeah.
just not really a big deal to most people, but like
Sure.
you'd have to sort of yeah, you'd have to just sort of go through the whole sequence of hit a crystal, go here, hit a crystal, like you'd have to
Yeah.
replay essentially the whole level in
Yeah.
sequence.
Yeah. I mean, and that one was really like sashimied up with cutscenes of like the big monster or whatever. So um, I do eventually appreciate um, like the big monsters on your side, and you're like just trying to help it while it's fighting off bots. Like, but yeah, I think that whole level is you play for like 2 or 3 minutes in one part of the level, then you hit the crystal and you play 2 3 minutes, and then get a cutscene and switch 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 back and forth between the rifts. Play another. That one was really nice between the rifts.
hmm
Yeah.
I did appreciate that, like, there was a variety of levels where you'd
Oh
have
yeah.
something that was a little bit more linear, but then you'd have like a big map
Yeah.
to kind of fly around in. I do think that they did a great job there. That's why I feel like I know that you kind of revisit some things, some levels, but it does feel like this game. I would jump at like DLC that was a new planet or a few new
I
planets or
definitely
something.
think that there is some potential for. I'm trying to think if 2016 had DLC. I didn't play it if it did, but I think there's definitely value in, like, I definitely think people would pay $5 to $10 for a new planet or two added to the Rift.
Yeah, for sure. Give me new costumes, give me new, like, if there's like the modern version of a cheat code where you can turn on, low
Infinite
gravity
ammo.
or stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
like give me all that kind of goofy stuff that I can play through the game again with.
yeah, that's great. What was your gun combo, or what was your favorite kind of guns? I did like that, or at least I didn't max out every gun. I don't know that that's necessarily possible through a single playthrough. You don't have to tell me if your experience varies, but I wasn't able to max out everything. I got things pretty, but like the ice gun that you get like late in the game. I also didn't invest in like the thing that shoots plants and like freezes people in place. But anything that like cast
Mhm.
minions on the ground, I was all about it. So that was like my favorite thing. So as soon as I got like minion bots running around and the mushrooms that like are shooting at people, like those are some of my favorites. And then eventually it broke down to like sometimes I would just spray and pray. So anything I'd wrap, I was usually using that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I had gotten by the time I stopped, I had everything upgraded to the point where, I know that if you kind of play it again, or you can sort of go even further, like you can get everything to like level 10 or something.
Oh wow.
So like there's another tier above the initial completion.
Okay.
I didn't do any of that. I got everything to sort of that first tier of completion.
Okay.
But it took me until basically the time to get like the platinum. Because, and again, I was like
Okay.
trying to switch around.
Okay.
But yeah, I was a big fan of like anything that could summon something.
Yeah.
Um, I really like, yeah, I think it's like the spread, anything that sort of spreads out, or an AoE effect.
Hmm.
There were a few things. It's funny because you mentioned the plant one. I also I never really quite knew how to use that.
Hmm.
Um, the drill one too, that sort of it burrows in and then they jump out.
Yeah.
Those were kind of harder to use. I feel like my favorites were, like, I love the pixelizer just because of the effects that it made.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of summoning little mushroom guys, a lot of summoning little
Yeah.
robots,
Yep.
and explosions. Those were kind of my go-tos.
So did you have enough of the crystals to like get all the way through all those? Because I definitely had less, like probably half of my guns I didn't invest any crystals in. I don't know if I was necessarily missing some or if there was some grinding involved with. I know that like if you keep there's like respawning dinosaurs that drop 2 or 3 every time you kill them. I didn't grind it all for crystals, but I definitely didn't have to get everything in the tech tree.
I did, but
Okay.
I was grinding a bit.
Okay.
So I kind of did that. And then once I got once I got to the point where it was like, oh, there's another tier above this, I was like, yeah, no thanks.
Okay.
But I at least did. But like I said, I was grinding a bit and I was sort of collecting everything and going back to places. So um, you can get there, but I did
Okay.
not put in the time to. I think if the game gave me more incentive, other than just now the guns can be even more powerful,
Yeah.
I may have kept going because I was enjoying it, but I just sort of like the end game, I just didn't know what else to do past that initial
Yeah.
you've
Finish.
gotten everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was trying to think of where 2016 left off because like this one starts off with the parade, and I was like, we left off with parade, and then again I don't have the full history of like Ratchet's search for the other Lombaxes. But I think, do we start off playing as, or like right after the parade, then we switch to Rivet?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, you play through Ratchet during the parade, and I think
Parade, and
it's
that's like your
over the
tutorial
river.
level. Yeah,
Hmm.
and then you
Because she's
start.
got Clank initially.
Yes, yeah, and like, oh yes, because Clank comes falling through the rift and then latches onto her. Um, but overall, I mean, I thought like they hit all the good tropes of like multiple universes colliding. We don't see the like super evil nefarious until 60% of the game, which I was kind of fine with. just like constantly going through the quest. I did like the way that the worlds were. I did it in a way that I was always alternating between Rivet and Ratchet. I know that when you have 4 worlds opened up, you could like do all the Ratchet planets, and then theoretically back to back Rivets. But I was always like characters. Um, yeah, I think the narrative had a pretty good pace to it. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I do think that I probably missed out on some appreciation of like the alternate versions of characters that I feel like if I had really spent time with some of these people that I would have been like really enjoying kind of to see their different universe version.
Yeah.
That was one thing that I could tell that I was missing out on kind of playing this as my first game. Of just,
Oh yeah.
ooh, like this would have been funny to see like this other version of this guy.
Even I didn't have the context for that. I was like they had Captain Quark, and he's like different than Captain Quantum, and I'm like, I don't like. I think it's just
No.
funny that he was like the leader of the pirates, but I had no concept for like, oh, he's seems like I think Captain Quark or whatever the current universe's version is like inept. So this one being capable, like okay, I kind of got that funniness. Same with like the secret agent guy, like the first one you're trying to meet up with. But yeah, I didn't have a lot of that context of like who's secret agent guy and who's Captain, the alternate version of Captain Quark. I didn't get a lot of that context because again, I don't have super history with it.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I do think that I enjoyed the story. I really liked sort of the everything that happened, the dimension jumping. I liked all that.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I could easily appreciate it, but
Mhm.
I'm sure that if somebody was a really big fan of the series, this would have been all the more kind of enjoyable to see these different versions. So I do feel like I kind of missed out on that sort of appreciation. But at the same time, like to your point, it was you know everything is the characters are fun. I really enjoyed going back and forth. You kind of
Mhm.
you kind of get that sense of different experiences, different versions of things.
Yeah.
I feel like this is perfectly accessible as a story for
Yeah.
somebody who goes in totally fresh.
Yeah. I completely agree. I actually jumping ahead a little bit, or I don't think I can. Like the relationship between um like Rivet and Kit. Like I thought that was like really cool and like subtly hinted at. Yeah, I really like the kind of the Kit Rivet relationship. Oh, we're running around with Rivet has Clank right now, and what's that all about? Um, it made for like unique experiences. I thought it was pretty. I actually really like,
Yeah, same. I think Rivet was my favorite actually.
and that gets to kind of what I have here with like the future of the series. Like, so is the next game gonna also have Rivet and Ratchet, or like? Because I definitely think even going back to like some of the marketing, like people were super enamored with Rivet going in, and like they had the whole thing of like what was her name going in, so like they were definitely leaning in on like the character, and I think again I think it worked. I think good character. I'm curious what you do next, like because I think the next Ratchet and Clank game without Rivet, you know, be expecting that, or do you spin it off and now it's a Ratchet and Clank featuring Rivet and Kit, or what do you do from here?
I think it's tricky because and maybe this is my own projecting. I kind of got the sense, and I'm kind of guessing. Ratchet's been around for a while. It almost felt like Rivet was sort of this fresh kind of idea they could explore
Ooh.
a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
She felt a little bit deeper. I don't know. Again, maybe I'm reading into
Yeah.
it, but it kind of starts off. She's a little bit more. She's been through some stuff. I think maybe this was sort of the fresh eyes where you kind of start and Ratchet is being celebrated and
Yes.
Rivet's kind of like a little bit more, I guess, gritty to use a word I used earlier, but
Sure.
kind of street level in some, doing some stuff. Like it seemed like they kind of got to um, start her in an interesting position. And I feel like I can't imagine they're not going to use her more.
Oh
Yeah, but
yeah.
then yeah, to your point, like who do you make a game around? And I could see them doing both. I think that
Yeah.
you I would be pretty disappointed if Rivet wasn't in the next game.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and that's kind of why I had this as a big bullet. It's like, think the fans are going to expect Rivet going forward. And I didn't even think about like, yeah, Ratchet is this like seasoned veteran, universe saver, and Rivet's like this young upstart resistance fighter. Um, I I would actually be pretty impressed if it was just full on pass the torch, like
Yeah.
now the series called Rivet Kid or something. People
I
play
could
that.
see a pretty cool moment of like the game starts off, almost like if the marketing and it's sort of just Rivet and then, Ratchet. Because I'm kind of imagining this sort of, Ratchet's gone through the hero's journey and he's sort of like celebrated and he could sort of be this figure that, he doesn't see what's going on, on the streets or, whatever.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah. Too
Rivet's
high.
kind of doing this stuff and we can follow her for a while and then maybe Ratchet shows up. But I would be, I guess this is one of the things that getting back to a thought earlier is
Yeah.
it did feel like Rivet was, there's so much to explore there with like her experiences and kind of
Mm-hmm.
how she's gone through the world.
Yeah.
Um, I did feel like I would love like a Rivet focused narrative, at least for a little bit, where she's sort of dealing with some of these things.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think having them both in the same kind of story equally, you have to kind of balance both of their perspectives, and it may not. I want to get into Rivet's story, I guess is what I'm getting at.
No,
And I
I
think if
totally.
Ratchet was there 100%, like you might not be able to do that as easily.
No, I totally agree. And like even the fact that like Clank is missing an arm after the teleportation, and like she's got the robotic arm, like that was super interesting to just kind of live in, and wasn't really discussed. But like that was definitely part of the narrative of like she's missing an arm, and then the fact that like she mistrusts robots at the beginning, and like that leads to like this clash with Kit being like the robot who potentially took her arm. Like there's a lot of bad blood there, and the fact that like you sit for like 20% of the game, like Kit's completely out of the picture. You're just like going on without a robot companion. I thought it was super compelling. And there is definitely a lot more lore with it.
I think that's my only really not complaint, note, thought, whatever
Yeah,
of the story of this game is that it always felt like you could have like we could have really explored some more, quote unquote serious for
yeah,
the
for
series,
yeah,
a serious sort of story with Rivet. And that's kind of what I hope happens in the future is just a little bit more exploration of some of these things that she's gone through. Yeah, like I totally forgot about her kind of bias against robots, which was
big starting
because
point.
there's so much interesting stuff with her in general
Yeah,
that like that aspect too. Like, yeah, let's get into Rivet's story a bit.
yeah. No, I completely. Yeah, I I really like I really like Rivet. I think they definitely have to have her next game like expecting.
Hmm.
Do you have any? I'm trying to think of like again. I think this might be a bit of a negative, with just boss variety. But was there particular boss fights that you mechanics for or anything like?
Um, Honestly, like I think this is gonna sound too harsh, but to me, like the enemies were kind of forgettable in general.
Sure.
And I think the game that I kind of played with the self-constructed was just trying to pixelate everything. Um, but I mean, I really did. The designs are great, like everything about it is great, but it
Hmm.
did feel a little bit. I just, for me personally, I think the enemies were kind of the weak point of the game.
Sure. No,
I
yeah,
think in a vacuum, everything looked cool, but then it felt like there's like a sameness to a lot of the confrontations, even the boss fights, where it was just like,
yeah,
okay, I'm kind of going through the motions a little bit as far as how I attack, what I shoot first, what I do, like
yeah,
summon a guy, and then use this gun, and then, so I don't know.
yeah.
It's
No,
kind of a negative answer.
yeah, no, I think you're right. I think, like I said, every every wave of like robot minions, they just kind of. I completely agree, but like I liked the the one robot fight I did like was like was in the pirate animatronics level. Like I mean I just appreciated the lead up and like they were kind of building up this big fight, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh nope, there's nothing here, just keep going. And I was like, I really liked the kind of themes and funniness of like the pirate level. And then as much as I didn't like switching between the rifts on the frozen planet, eventually fighting next to the big monster that's been chasing you the whole time. Fun. Um,
Yeah, I think it was more. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go for it.
I was just gonna say, for me, it was sequences like that where it was almost more of like a sequence that I really enjoyed rather than the boss itself, which I know is kind of one of the same for some
Yeah,
of those. But it was like what sticks in my mind are just sort of sequences like that. And I did really enjoy that kind of like befriending a creature or like the pirate stuff. Like,
yeah,
um, but it's sort of like it happens is sort of like a sequence of events rather than like a
yes,
pure boss fight.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely. Um, the, the prison escape, I think, of Sammy fighting again a billion times. I actually was expecting. I wanted to fight the big kraken creature. I was like, I feel like that's what we're building for, but minion wave or something.
Mhm.
Oh, you don't set up a kraken if I'm not gonna fight it. Um, yeah. So there were some moments in there, and then I don't know where like Nefarious. I got a little frustrated with some of his animations at you, and he do like some of the melee attacks. I think somewhat unavoidable, or I just didn't read the telegraph very well. Coming in for a melee switch, couldn't avoid it. Dodging the wrong way.
No, I had the exact same experience where it just felt like I was gonna get hit, and it was more about hitting him as much as I could rather than dodging. Because some of
Yeah,
the, to your point, I was just taking hits and I didn't know if I was doing it wrong or not. But yeah,
yeah. And then the I always used the metal minions as like my oh shit button. Like anytime I was like super low, I would just like swap to the minions, like the robot minions, and just throw all of them on the ground. That was my okay. I'm low, and this fight's a little bit harder than I thought it was. Let me just throw all these, and like they'll just clean up the fight. So it like trivialized it, invested all of the things in. Yeah.
yeah, they felt really powerful.
Yes.
I had to fight using them sometimes because I just felt like they would steamroll everything.
Yep. Yeah. The fact that like teleport and then again, I didn't think the ice gun I think did basically nothing, and uh and the dairy gun I like didn't even. I did get a little upset that like I got the rhino, like I've collected all the golden bolts, and I'm like 95% of the game, and it's like you give it to me at level 1. Like come on. Like what am I supposed to do with this? I'm literally picking this up before I go to the final boss. You give me a level 1 gun. Come on. I did work to get this. Give me a level 5 gun.
Well, maybe this is how it always works, but I felt like the Rhino was fun to use with like a bunch of little robots, but I remember using it against a couple bosses and it just missed a lot. Like it
Yes.
just because it has to drop something on it. So I feel
Uh-huh.
like sometimes I was just like, all right, just I can't. This isn't effective here because maybe that's just how it always has been as a weapon. It's like it's
Sure.
designed for crowds, but I didn't use the Rhino as much as I thought by end of game.
Yeah. No, I think I like I said I barely used a level. Um but I think you're right. I think even like on a boss fight, like you completely whip the boss and be like, okay, I only have 3 bullets with this, and I just great.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the weapons here, and I definitely did not use that topiary sprinkler that much.
Yeah.
I don't know that I even really. I guess it just sort of it froze enemies and then weakened them.
Well, and
I
then like
guess.
they can't move, so like I think they were expecting us to use like our melee weapon, which I used negative 0 times in
Yeah,
combat. Like this was just completely ineffective to like run up to things. Also, I'm not getting weapon experience if I'm using my melee weapon. I assume that's been a part of the history of the game, is like to use a melee weapon, use your ratchet to hit people, but I definitely used it negative time.
Actually super interesting to think about because I feel like I don't know that I used it really at all. I think I had looked at it the most when I unlocked like the different skins for it,
Uh huh.
and I think I looked at every one of them and was like, "Oh, cool," and then just never saw any of those in action. I don't think I really used melee at all. To maybe
Yeah.
like smash crates, but
Yep.
um,
Yeah. And
in
then I
combat,
found
I don't
out.
know.
Then I found out that the if you miss with the ricochet gun, it comes back to you. So I started using that to break crates. I was like, oh, that's
Oh,
like,
interesting.
I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool mechanic. Like I could use this to shoot at crates because it comes back if you miss. That's really cool. Um, and like I said, I don't know, maybe it's just coming out of like Doom Eternal. I appreciate gun combat a little bit more. Of like maybe there's a more tactical edge, and so anything like again like the electric gun where it like jumps and hits a crowd of people. That was probably one of my favorite guns. Their minion and boss fight. That's what I use the drill gun for a boss fight. Like because it could like you just target it and it can't miss, so 10% of boss health. Shoot a couple of those at the boss. Or heavy minion.
That's it. I wonder if because I'm thinking of like Horizon Zero Dawn, which I feel like did a great job of kind of making you use every tool in your arsenal.
Uh huh.
And I think, and I realize, again, this is my first Ratchet and Clank, and there's probably fans who just want to use a bunch of guns and don't really care, and
Yeah.
the fun is the guns. But I feel like maybe if there was a little bit of an element of really making it to where certain enemies or certain bosses are really only vulnerable to certain things, or
Sure.
because I think I ended up doing a lot of switching on the fly because it was kind of interesting, but it doesn't seem like you ever really need to do that.
Yeah.
And I imagine if you powered up one or two weapons, you really could use them the entire time.
Oh yeah.
And I just I wonder too if it felt samey to me, and I was even switching around
Yeah.
everything that I could.
Yep. Well, that's like each weapon wheel had its like glove bomb. Each weapon wheel had its
Yeah,
shotgun like gun. Each weapon wheel had its spray and pray gun. Weapon wheel rocket kind of hitting gun. Like I definitely think the guns can feel a little, even if you're switching it up. It's like okay, I'll put down the pixelator shotgun and I'll pick up the shield shotgun, which I barely ever used shielding thing.
so
Um,
yeah.
that's the one thing. It's going way back to like PlayStation 5 complaint. The whole half trigger thing does nothing for me. Like when I pull the trigger, I'm pulling it all the way down. Half trigger press, like quit trying to sell me on this. I don't
Yeah.
I will never half pull a trigger. Who does that?
It's also an element. I There was one trophy that I think it is like use the shield gun and like
Absorb a
reflect
big hit
bullets.
or something?
I think that I went through the entire game to Google what it even was referring to. I think pulling a half trigger, to your point, it's not even something that I'm thinking about doing. Like I'm just pulling the trigger, and it's not only that the game wants you to do it, it's that like you have to kind of like yeah, like pull it halfway, the gun does one thing, all the way it does something else. I miss that mechanic the entire time because I'm just
Yeah.
not thinking about half pulling a trigger.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it is something that I feel like doesn't. I just like don't need it. And if you're gonna have it in your game, like remind me because I
Yes.
just don't play games that way, and
Yep.
it's only really a handful of games that even do it.
Yep. Yeah. We talked a little bit about kind of replay value, but I was really expecting like a new game plus, and I don't know that that's what it. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what it said at the end of the game of like, hey, you've gotten a star, you can go back to your pre-final boss fight, save, and continue to level up guns. But I was really kind of expecting potentially a new game.
I think it lets you. I think the next time you play through it, the enemies are a little bit harder.
Okay.
But I think that's it. And to me, that's just not quite enough. Um, and I think I'm a completionist. So if you give
Yeah.
me a little breadcrumb, like I'll probably follow it. Like if it was like beat this game with harder enemies and you unlock this like crazy amazing skin or gun or a new
BFG or something.
world or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
yeah, like I'll probably do it. But I
Hmm.
think with this one, I completed everything, or I found all the collectibles. I got the guns to the first tier, just sort of
Uh-huh.
while doing collectibles. But then it was like, oh, okay, well, now I can just do it again. And to me, that just not isn't quite enough. But man, like
Yeah.
if there was like some ultra cool skin, I would have done it again.
Okay.
So for me, it was just like there wasn't much replayability, I guess. I completed it, but then I
Hmm.
had zero desire to sort of do it again.
Do how much time did you spend like skin swapping or changing out your skin? Or the one I did the least of was switching out my skin for my ship, and the fact that I couldn't visualize it within the UI, like I just had to change it to a and go out and like ship. And the fact that I couldn't visualize that kind of frustrating. Switch to just not sound. You need to play the game, but
Yeah, I feel like if they did if the ship thing wasn't just sort of palette swaps, if it was more like your,
oh
the
yeah,
Ratchet and Rivet skins where you like legitimately look really different.
yeah,
I think if they did that with the ship, I would have been more interested.
yep,
Because like even the weapons, the melee weapons, you could have like a giant swordfish, or you could have like these
shovel,
crazy sort of different types of skins.
yeah,
Um, that was awesome, but I
yeah,
feel like the ship didn't have anything like that. So
yep.
that was also I even changed the currency or the crystals or the coins. I think I changed it to like the soda cans, or
Oh,
I spent time with each one of those
uh huh. Oh,
because you can see it more.
yep. I as soon as I could, I changed it to rupees, and I was like, yep, Zelda fan. I gotta collecting rupees every time I hit a box. So that was like, oh, I can make it more Zelda like. Great.
Yeah, I think I did like the soda cans for quite a while,
Haha,
and then
nice.
and then uh, rupees was definitely one that I did. Like that kind of stuff. Like I'm a sucker for. Like give me
Yeah,
more of that.
yeah,
Um, Yeah, I wish the ship one would have been a little bit more interesting, because that was sort of like they were pretty much just palette swaps if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
yeah. No, I completely agree. Cause yeah, I did, I did it, I did it a little bit early, and then like right before the final boss, I everything out to exactly how I want. Like yeah, I switched one to like a keyblade, which was a great reference. One I switched to a sword, or one was a shovel for like a hot second. But yeah, I think that adds definitely some flavor, and you can put some references in there. Definitely get a few people. So, yeah, I liked it. But again, I agree that the ship palette swap felt a little lacking.
I think if they had given me even, if a new game plus was like now all the enemies look different, or now the enemies,
Sure,
there's
attack
new
differently.
enemies,
Yeah,
um, that kind of stuff would have definitely hooked me. So I hope hopefully that like there could be, a big patch or a big update at some point that adds a bunch of new features that would get me to reinstall the game.
yeah,
Um, but I did. It was kind of unfortunate because I really enjoyed time I spent, and then it was sort of when it was over, it was just like, all right, I'm done. Um, More
yeah,
so than even like a Spider-Man, where I'll still hop in every once in a while and just swing around.
yeah, yeah. I
This felt
definitely.
more final.
Yep. No, I agree, and I appreciated the length. Like I don't want. I wasn't going in expecting a 40-hour experience. I want a 12-hour experience. Got it. It was playing it that way. Yeah, that's. I could definitely. There's a 5, 10, 15, potentially 20 would feel a little high for
Yeah.
more planets. Would definitely
Even like a little bit of flying in your ship would have been really cool. Some of these sort of big space maps,
Oh yeah,
even if there's not much to do, like if I can
space
just
battles.
give me like a little bit of space battle.
Yeah, definitely there. We completely glossed over, and I don't know if that means it's forgettable, but the like turret shooter spider robot sections. What were your thoughts on
Oh
those? I got
wow,
I got a
yeah.
little I got a little frustrated in some of those because like I have no concept of where to go. Like, oh, maybe I have to walk up on the wall and then like well, now the door is open or something. But yeah, those turret sections, little wonks.
Wow, yeah, I totally forgot about that, which I guess to your point, it seems like they shouldn't have been that forgettable because you do it quite a bit.
Yeah.
At least it felt like that, but I did feel like they were a little bit frustrating because they were I keep using this samey,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
where it sort of felt like, oh, we're doing this again,
Yeah.
and you don't move that fast. They're all kind of the same format. Those were kind of a forgettable part of this game to
Yeah.
me.
And I feel like feel like at some point there was trying to be a narrative throughout those, but you do them once every 2 hours. Definitely. And I played it. That was kind of like my session length. Like I played it for 2 hours. So like I definitely couldn't carry through any narrative if there was one. But yeah, I thought like, oh, cool, a little turret shooter section, but it definitely found some frustrating parts. Oh, I gotta run on the roof to like go on the Mickey Square to make sure that shields go down or whatever.
Yeah, I think that there's just better examples in games of kind of, I don't want to say random, but just sort of like a switch in gameplay.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's the problem is it really wasn't that big of a switch in gameplay.
No.
It was kind of the same thing. And I feel like the game that jumps to mind would be like a Near Automata where you kind of
Mm-hmm.
might all of a sudden be in this top-down shooter or this side-scrolling shooter.
Uh huh.
And I feel like those sections needed to be
Different.
different. They just
Yeah.
needed to be like a dramatic shift in gameplay.
Yeah.
Um, because I like they ended up sort of just being like, who is this character? Why do I care about this random thing? Like, couldn't this have just been a hacking mini game real quick?
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
were gonna spend some time in that, like, give me like something that's like really different.
One more frustration I had before we get to pre final thought. Final thought. But I feel like the dash distance was too long sometimes for like some of their jumping puzzles. Because like the double jump can get me like would get me like I would expect they would want me to dash, and I could double jump to get to the length of whatever the jump was. So like, and I don't know if that's a timing thing, but like then it was like I would dash and I would like overshoot the platform. And I was like, you got to work on your dash distance. Like I could double jump to make it to whatever you're expecting me to dash to. Like, come on. I definitely like, especially in like the arena where like there's lava or whatever, and you gotta jump across the arena. Um, I was like,
Yeah,
I could get across the arena with a double jump. Why do I need a dash?
yeah. I think that there was some movement things that were a little bit. I think the problem with games like a platformer like this, where there's a lot of exploration, is sometimes you hit like the movement maybe isn't as tight as you need it to be, or like you think you can make a
Yep.
jump, or and you hit like a rock that has a weirdly large hitbox or something where
Yep.
I find myself, you know, thinking that I could make it to some platform or explore something, jumping and maybe kind of like being off, like your midair controls aren't super tight,
Yeah.
and then I hit like a stalagmite and I go flying off the side. Something weird where it's just like I died because of that,
Yep.
or I couldn't quite make it. Yeah, I totally agree with you, and becomes more evident, I think, when you're trying to sort of explore these little worlds and
Yeah.
like, oh, this looks cool. What is this over here? And you jump over to it, and you just sort of like fall off to the side, or you can't make it, or I don't know. Then it's like, did I not make it because I did the jump wrong, or is there like an invisible wall that I can't see?
Yeah, and there was, I think one of the levels had like a mountain, and like I would get to a certain point in the mountain, and I was like, oh, I think the golden whatever is the golden bolt's down there. I'll have to jump down to get to it, and like I'll jump down and like start paragliding down, and then it would like hit some invisible floor, and I'm like, oh, I'm now falling to my death. Like, what was that about? It's definitely down there, and then to realize like, oh, there's a strange series of rails that I got to get to it the right way. But I'm like, why is there a right way? Like, I can paraglide down, just let me do it.
And I had actually a couple of weird instances in various maps. One of them, I think, was the lava. I don't remember what it was called,
Oh, sure.
but there were a few times when I was able to sort of dash and jump behind something,
Oh,
and I thought it was a platform I could explore or get somewhere, but I ended up sort of being stuck or I
oh,
couldn't get back up. I had that happen a few times actually, where I was kind of
yeah.
trapped because because you could jump out pretty far, and there were some platforms that like I could jump over the lava and find some like platform to jump on, but then I couldn't get back. I actually had that happen a
Yep.
few times.
No, yep. It was the sea slug level where like I would get to like the sea slug level was completely open, and then like I get to this like far off island, but if I jumped off the sea slug and there's not a thing around, I'm like, okay, now I'm stuck on this island. What do I do? And then I
It's kind of a it's like a weird thing where and I know obviously making games is super complicated, but you have
there.
this thought of just like nobody caught this or like,
Yeah.
nobody kind of because I don't think that I was trying to break anything or like
Uh huh.
really I was just sort of like here looks this looks like a platform, let me jump to it. I can jump to it. Oh wait, I can't get back.
Yeah.
Um yeah, that happened a few times.
Yep. I agree. Any other gameplay narrative characters you want to talk to before we kind of wrap it up?
I and maybe this is kind of getting into my final thoughts, I guess, but I just really loved I don't want to end on a negative, but
Yeah.
I thought this was sort of a perfect um combination of, easy to follow story, uh very visually interesting, you know, like perfect length, like you said,
Yeah.
like there was more that you could do if you wanted to do it. Um I just think this was a, sort of a great combination of a bunch of factors that I had a really great time with this, and it didn't overstay its welcome at all
Yeah.
um, for me. So I thought the characters were awesome. I thought the story was like exactly what it needed to be,
Hmm.
and then I do hope in the future we get more of Rivet.
Yep.
So that's yeah, nothing that we haven't talked about, but
Yeah. No.
thought that was great. The narrative was great.
Well, yeah. Thanks for talking about this with me. I'm really excited and was excited. Back in 2020 when I knew this was coming out and it showed off what the PlayStation can do. I think it looked beautiful. I agree that I I want to see more Rivet in the future. So Somniac is watching or listening, so that they definitely include her because I think she's a very compelling character, and I'm kind of fingers crossed that like passing of the torch because really strong character.
Yeah, I mean, I am looking back through like some screenshots that I actually took during the game.
Ooh, okay.
I'm big into photo modes, but like I just like even just looking at these images, it's just such a beautiful game. I think the biggest thing that I kind of want is just more. I mean,
Yeah,
I have little things that I would like to see. Like I really hope we explore. I don't want to use gritty too much, but like just like a more the
yeah,
Resistance fighter. Like Rivet was such an interesting character to me. Like even looking at Nefarious City, like man, that city looks so awesome.
yes,
Let's get more like of like a grounded story. And I realized that jumping around for riffs is like a big part of this game, but
yeah,
I'm fully down to spend more time in Nefarious City or even like some of this sort of like old decrepit like mining station that's been broken down. Like there's so much amazing design.
yeah,
Like let me live in these worlds more.
yeah. Just a little longer. Yeah, no, yeah, I completely agree. I could see like even this game, like 50% longer would give us 50% more Rivet, 50% more Ratchet. Like that would, yeah, I think living in that universe was the fact that like the Air Nefarious has like some weird telekinetic powers. I was like, holy crap, this dude's OP. No wonder he's the emperor of the universe or whatever. Yeah, I and he's like, they did a good job with like leaving the super bad off screen for 60% of it, and then introducing him late, and then powerful while powering Final Combat. Yeah, I live in a longer game. Fingers crossed for some DLC.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks, Tyler. I always appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Looking forward to the next one.
Yep.
Well, that's it for this month's Friend Zone. I really enjoyed it, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts down below in the comments about what you thought of Ratchet and Clank. So again, thank you for Tyler for talking about Ratchet and Clank with me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you do, follow, like, and subscribe to me on Twitch. You can see more great content like this. I'll have links down below in the description. Thanks again. I hope you have a super day. I hope you have a super month. I hope you have a super day. Bye!